Welcome to the Core Balance Training channel, where each week we talk about a different topic for getting out of the back pain cycle for good. My name's Dr. Ryan Peebles, and this week we're talking about what is the best technique for picking up a heavy object. And we're actually going to reference a study where they measured 3 different techniques for picking up a heavy object with electromyography to measure spinal forces. And we're going to talk about the outcome of this study, which technique is the best. And then I'm actually going to go through each technique myself, plus 2 more additional techniques that I've added, and use myself as a guinea pig to show you and let you know which ones felt the best, which ones actually hurt. And I will say I'm actually sore today after doing this yesterday from a couple of the techniques. So we'll talk about those and why as well. So here's the study. It's how to lift a box that is too large to fit between the knees. If you wanted to look that up, they measured the stoop, the squat, and the weightlifting technique. So we'll talk about what each of those actually mean. And you can see that the student is wearing the electromyography machine, which is measuring compression forces on the spine, forward shear, which is where one vertebrae slides forward on another and causes friction on the discs, and lumbar flexion, which is forward bending of the lumbar spine. You can see here in the stoop technique. And so ultimately, the outcome of this study was different depending on whether the student was picking up the box from the high grip position in the handles of the box or the low grip position. When the student was holding the box from the upper grip position, the weightlifting technique resulted in 20% less compression forces on the spine, and the other factors measured were no significant difference. If the student was picking up the box from the low grip position, there was no significant difference between each of the techniques on the forces measured. And so this actually reinforces one of the concepts that we teach in core balance training, which is it doesn't matter what you're doing, it matters how you do it. And I don't mean how in the sense that which technique you use is better. That's the what. The technique is what technique are you using? And that doesn't really nearly matter as much as how your core and your muscles are engaging during the activity. How do you engage your core? Are the muscles in balance with each other? Are they working synergistically, and are they staying engaged, or are you staying connected to them throughout the movement? No matter what movement you're doing, but especially for picking up objects off the floor. If we go back and look at each technique, we could say that the muscles of the core could be engaged in a synergistic way or not for any one of these techniques. And so in that sense, it's much more important the quality of the engagement of these muscles than the actual movement, because the muscles are what support the spine. The muscles are responsible for creating the stability and protecting the spine. And so the technique is secondary to the muscle engagement. And so now we're going to get into me being a guinea pig and trying each one of these techniques myself. And I'm going to just talk about each one as we go through. So the first technique that we saw was the stoop technique. And the stoop technique is actually what I would consider to be the least technical, probably the worst technique. And it's where that student was allowing his lower back to bend. And this is what I'm going to try and demonstrate here. Mostly just lifting the box with the lower back. So I'm just naturally just allowing my spine to curve and relax here. No real support for it, letting the muscles just lift the box. And you can see I don't actually lift all the way up very well. I had put 50 pounds in the box. So it's a pretty significant amount of weight that I can feel while I'm lifting it. It was kind of hard for me to straighten all the way up there, if you noticed. Now the next technique I'm going to go into, and we are using the low grip position for this first round, is the squat technique. And as you can see, I'm trying to keep my torso rather upright rather than bending forward like in the stoop technique. So I'm trying to stay as upright as possible. And this was really hard for me to lift. You can see my face was really straining. And this really was heavily using my legs to lift the box. This is kind of the way that we are taught growing up and in life. They say, use your legs. Well, that technique mostly was just using my quads and my legs to lift this 50-pound box. The next technique I'm doing is the weightlifting technique. And now this is kind of using a combination of my glutes, my hips, and my legs. And this I found much easier to lift the box and less straining, and I don't think it was as much compression on my spine. Now I'm going to show one more technique here, and this is my absolute favorite technique. This is the deadlift technique. It's similar to the stoop, except my core is engaged. You can see me checking that my core is engaged, and I don't really let my spine round as I did in the stoop. So it's heavily using my glutes with my spine protected with my core. And this is the preferred technique that we teach in the core balance training program because it really utilizes the glutes as the primary lifter rather than the spine or the legs. So we're going to go through each technique one more time with the high grip position. This is the stoop again. I'm going to just kind of let my spine curl as much as I can, and then I'm lifting with my lower back muscles. Not much technique involved there, not really thinking about my body. And then I'm going to go into the squat one more time. I'm trying to keep my torso upright, so I'm kind of taking my glutes out of the equation. I'm just lifting mostly with my quads and my legs. That was the hardest, took the most effort. It was the hardest for me to lift. Here's the weightlifter's technique. I'm using legs and glutes, and that one was a lot easier. And that was the one with a 20% less compression forces in the study. Here's the deadlift technique, where I am actually just using mostly hips to lift the box. And that is the easiest technique and what I found to be the least compressive on the spine. So we're going to do a fifth technique here. And this is a technique that I would recommend for anyone who has trouble with just bending forward at all and really just has difficulty lifting up objects from the ground because it sets off their pain, maybe can cause, a little bit of a flare up. So this is what I call the golfer's technique, and it's using one leg where the other leg kind of goes back, and it takes a lot of the strain off of the spine by throwing that leg back. So there's less bending in the spine. If you have trouble with balance, you can use something to keep your balance, or if you don't need to have the extra balance, you don't need a prop like a cane or an umbrella. So I mentioned that I'm sore today after filming this video yesterday, and I definitely feel like it was the stoop technique that caused my body to feel sore and my back just to feel a little bit off. I've done the deadlift and the squat technique so many times where I am utilizing the strongest muscle group in my body, which is the glutes, and my core is engaged, and it just feels easy, and it feels like my spine is protected. And I just want to reiterate that it is so important to grasp this concept. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And the how is, how are your muscles engaging? Do you have a healthy core engagement? How do you engage your core? And so this is the type of thing that we teach in the core balance training program. If you're interested in learning a healthy core engagement, check it out. There's a free 7-day trial, so you can get a taste of it and feel like it's not for you. It's super easy to cancel. But if you feel like there's something to this, we get to the point in the program where we teach you to be able to do these things in your life that we need to be able to do without hurting yourself, and more importantly, without fearing hurting yourself. So that's the topic for today. Hopefully you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.